Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody can hear me. Okay, let the record indicate it is now 9:14 and the Finance Committee is back in order. I'm going to start out by asking Lynn Prodger. Lynn, would you unmute, please?
I think Karen Grandy's on the line to answer your question for you. Right, Bill?
I have not seen her show
He's
up.
muted.
I see Billy on the phone. I'm guessing he's on the phone with her.
Must
Okay,
be muted.
Lynn, I had a conversation with you a few moments ago. Could you, I'm going to start out with getting the Reader's Digest version from you on what that means. That being the disclosure certificate.
Yeah, so that's something we do annually down in finance, and it's just a document that we have to do for the SEC that outlines the financial health of the city and our ability to pay our debt. But Bill also has Karen Grandy on.
Can you hear? I'm
Correct
going to
me.
have Karen try to do a speakerphone here. Is this okay?
Sure,
Karen?
Chief, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah. Hi there. Hello, everyone.
hello.
So, as I understand it, the question has come up with regard to what SEC Rule 15C212 is all about. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, that's correct, Karen, and thank you for joining in. So the question is regarding the definition of executing and delivering a continuing disclosure certificate. The question is, what is the definition of a continuing disclosure certificate?
Okay, I'm happy to answer that question. Let me give you a tiny bit of history. Back when I was a young bond lawyer 30 years ago, there was no system of continuing disclosure for municipal securities similar to what there always has been for corporate securities. So if someone bought City of Warwick bonds, there was really no way for them to find out about the continuing financial status of the city, other than maybe calling the clerk's office or the finance department.
Is Karen, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't
Can
know
you
if
hear me?
yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Sounds like you might have missed some. May I try, Bill? May I try calling it again? My phone hopefully won't be locked up this time. Let me try on the Zoom number again.
Just so she knows, when she gets switched to go panelist mode, things will get weird for a minute because it's going to kick her out and bring her back in.
I mean, even if she calls, it's fine.
Sure.
True, very true. Councilman Ricks and I got to experience that in our 10:30 p.m. planning board meeting. I lost track, Jeremy.
It was a long one.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
Bill Waltz, go ahead, please.
while we have a moment, there is a housekeeping item that has been raised regarding items on the bid package that need to be pulled off so that a council member may recuse. So if the clerk, yourself, and I have a moment.
And what is that? I don't want to keep
Hi, Karen.
council
Couldn't get
waiting.
through?
If Karen's here, we can hold this to the end of the finance
Okay,
committee.
hold on.
Let's hold it.
I need a meeting
sir.
ID. I'm sorry. Phil, meeting ID?
The meeting ID would be
I wouldn't.
98786.
I missed it. Give me again from the beginning.
Should that be put out?
8786 9794.
I didn't get it. I got half of it.
978 8786 9794.
Okay, Karen? 978 8786 9794. Yes, try that. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Karen.
Hi, Karen. Thank you. Now we got you loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Alrighty, so I was about to explain a little bit of the background of SEC Rule 15C212 to give it some context. So back 30 years ago when I first started practicing law, there was no mechanism if a person bought a municipal bond for them to get access to financial information regarding the city or town that issued the bond. Unlike the corporate securities markets where you could always get secondary market financial information to learn how the entity that issued the bond was doing financially. And so the SEC adopted, the Securities and Exchange Commission adopted SEC Rule 15C212, which in simple terms requires that underwriters, before they buy your bonds, have to have reviewed an official statement, which is a disclosure document similar to a corporate prospectus. And they have to have reviewed that before they can put in an order to purchase your bonds. In addition, the SEC rule requires that the underwriter obtain, or the purchaser of the bond, if it's, say, the infrastructure bank, obtain a continuing disclosure undertaking, which we call a continuing disclosure agreement, from the city or town to provide annual financial information, regarding how the community is doing financially. And there's also a list of 17 specified events. If any of those things happen, then the municipality has to give notice that those things have happened. And so what the continuing disclosure agreement is really just the document where the city is saying that the city will provide the annual financial information and the specific event disclosures. This is typically signed by the finance director and the mayor. And there's actually a website where you can look these things up. It's called EMMA, EMMA, at the MSRB, Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. And you just go online and you can find all of the continuing disclosure filings for all the cities and towns and districts in states, for that matter, in the country that issue municipal bonds. And so all the city is agreeing to do is something that they're going to have to do anyway if they want to issue debt, which is to enter into the agreement to provide the annual financial information, which primarily consists of the city's financial statements, and also agree to provide that if any of those specified events occurs, that you'll provide notice.
Okay,
And that's okay.
that is, in summary. Karen, that's it? You're good?
That's it. That's it. And the city has been entering into these continuing disclosure agreements for years and years and years. And again, I could quickly and easily pull up one. They're online, and the filings that the city has made are all online, and it's all subject to public review, and it's publicly available. And it's common, and you've done it many, many, many times. And any city or town or state that wants to incur debt by issuing municipal bonds has to file these, filings.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like if you're familiar with the Edgar system that they have for corporate securities, you get a corporate prospectus. It describes the entity that's issuing the debt obligations or issuing the securities, the equity securities, and people have always been able to get information regarding their investments in the corporate market. And so this is a similar thing in the municipal securities market where people can get access to information after they've purchased the bonds.
Well, Karen, thank you very much for taking the time to join us and to answer the questions and give us a clear and understandable definition as to what that disclosure certificate means and what the implications are, et cetera. It becomes very concerning to me when there's language in a document such as this, which I might add is an ordinance, not a resolution, meaning that this becomes law. And speaking for myself, I can't get a definition from anybody as to what that means. And I am not going to vote on something blind that I do not have a definition on. So I do appreciate you taking the time to do that. I also want to thank Lynn for providing me with the quick Reader's Digest version, and Councilman Sinapi for sending me different, I'm assuming comes from legal dictionary definitions, which also have made it clear. So, is there any other questions on this issue? I have other concerns, but on this issue, is there any other questions? And most importantly, is everyone clear with what a continuing disclosure certificate entails and why it's necessary and why it's prudent to provide it? Is everyone clear with that?
Yeah, for the record, most of the council members here, including yourself, were clear on it December 9, 2013, when the same language is approved. So I think we can move on.
Yeah, well, that's fine. In 2013, that was 8 years ago, 7 years ago. It's still about the time that I'm waiting for the sewers to be installed too. But unfortunately, I don't have the recall right back to there. But are there any other questions regarding this issue? Councilman Howe, you had your hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move for favorable action.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Okay, while we're in discussion, is there any other questions or comments from any members of the council?
Yes, I have a question.
Councilman Corley.
In reading the PCO, the very first paragraph describes the need for the $7 million because of structural designs that have collapsed over time. And it's referred to in the paragraph as the project on line number 44. My question is, I have no disagreement that our infrastructure needs to be improved, but there is nothing in this ordinance that says that this money is going to be earmarked for any specific project. The only thing it says it will be used for are the same things that are done in every project. So I'm just thinking that this is not specific, and they've decided that $7 million is enough. I know that Governor Francis Phase 3 itself costs about a little over $5 million. So they must have some sort of a plan as to what they're going to do, but we don't have it. And I would like to hear from the sewer authority concerning what it is that is contained within the project and how they came up with the figure of $7 million and how it is going to be paid back. And then I'll wait to hear what his answer is.
Director Bond,
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
You can hear me?
Now I can, yes.
All right, so I'm gonna have Lynn address the finance.
I can't hear you. We're not hearing you.
How's this?
Good.
All right, so I'm gonna have Lynn address the financing portion and how we're gonna be able to address the costs associated. This bond is the being asked for to rehabilitate the airport interceptor and the Oakland Beach interceptor.
Hello.
Lynn, go ahead, Lynn.
Hi, so forgive me, I thought the documents in front of me were in front of you, so I'm going to try and explain what I'm looking at a little bit. The short version is that in fiscal year 21, we have a debt load reduction of $1.7 million. This should cost $175,000. And in fiscal year 22, the net there will be $1 million. So the cost of this will be very much offset by the reduction in debt carried by the sewer department already, which is also an indication of the need to put money back into the maintenance of sewer projects. I would share screen with these documents to you, and I can, if that's helpful, but it will take me a minute.
Councilman Corley, do you need that?
No, but can I ask, when you refer to the debt reduction, that is from previous bonds that have been passed by the council for the sewer authority?
Correct.
And I did not follow the fact that there was a 1.7 million. Was that the figure you used?
So in fiscal year 22, there will be a drop off of $1.5 million. With principal and interest, it'll be a payment of $400,000. So even with this Oakland Beach project, we will have $1.1 million less of debt next year.
What is the current debt?
The current debt is at $11 million, 11.4. Next year, the total will be 9.9.
And do you
So
know
to factor
what,
in this $400,000, it will still be 1.1 less in debt.
and how was the cost of the project to fix the airport interceptor and the Oakland Beach area determined?
This
So-
is over 20 years and 2.5% interest.
Yeah, Lynn, I think he's asking how we came about the opinion of probable cost. So when we started recognizing this critical infrastructure at a point where it's failing and we needed to rehabilitate it, simple answer, we took a numbers from the relining of the Oakland Beach Interceptor, that company, and created an opinion of probable cost based on diameter, size of the pipe, times the length, and came up with an opinion of probable cost, worked into an estimation with engineering for bypass pumping, and it's that simple.
Okay, can you give me a simple answer as to how much this is going to cost the people that are using the sewer authority to pay back? How much will be per EDU?
Again, I'm going to let Lynn address that, but we're going to be refinancing this off bond reduction of debt. So there's going to be no increase in rates and no impact to the ratepayer.
Even taking on this additional debt, the city will be, well, the sewer department will be paying less debt in fiscal year 22, resulting in no rate change to the end users.
Okay, I just don't understand. On the second page, section E on line 16, the bonds and notes shall be payable solely from revenues of the city system, including but not limited to annual charges, sewer assessments, connect capable charges. So all of those are being paid for by people except for the connect capable, which is against the law. The annual charges and sewer assessments come directly from the users of the sewer authority. So when you say that it's not being paid by the users, I don't understand how section E came to be.
It will be paid by the users, but there will be no rate change.
And how will it be paid by the users if it's not going to be related to a rate change? What other term are you going to use to give them bills to pay for this?
It's the same as ever. It's just it won't create an increase in the rate. It'll be neutral.
Where's the extra money going to come from if you're going to be receiving the same amount of money?
We're going to be reducing debt. So debt service is going to be coming off of our books, and we're going to reinvest it into the critical infrastructure.
I'm not following how you reduce debt by 1 million and borrowing 10 million, and it's a neutral transaction.
We don't pay the 10 in 1 year. There's debt dropping off in 22 for the amortization of that, and then in the new year we'll start paying it.
And that will be spread out over all of the users within the Warwick Sewer Authority system?
Correct.
But the sewer assessments have already been paid by the users, haven't they?
Some have.
So future sewer assessments will reflect payments that will be going towards paying this. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct, Councilman.
Okay, then what sewer assessments are going to be used to pay for this?
There are no sewer assessments going to be used to pay for that. Sewer assessments are a product of construction projects or sewer extensions. This is going to be generated and paid for by revenue out of the usage.
Okay.
Usage cost on the bill.
So when you use the language that it's going to be from revenues of the city's sewer system, including but not limited to annual charges, I understand what an annual charge is. But then it says sewer assessments and it connect capable charges. Is this just, it does have the phrase in front of it, but including but not limited to sewer assessments and connect capable charges, two phrases that probably shouldn't have found themselves into this ordinance.
Again, I have to refer to Karen Grande and the legal, as she wrote the resolution. But
Me?
Yes, Karen, would you like to comment on the connect capable language in here, please?
Sure. So these are revenue bonds, not payable from the full faith and credit and taxing power of the city, but solely revenues of the sewer system. And the city, in connection with those bonds, when you started issuing revenue bonds, entered into a trust indenture that basically creates a security interest in those revenues. And so the language in the bond ordinance is consistent with what the trust indenture has provided over the years. But essentially what you've heard is that the city has been paying debt service for years, and each year as the debt amortizes and gets paid off, the total outstanding debt goes down. And so what the city is looking to do is use those exact same revenues that have been paid on an annual basis for the sewer system and basically infill, because it's been going down, you have some debt capacity. And so if you envision like a triangle, a line going downwards, we're going to draw a horizontal line and basically infill that debt capacity with new bonds payable from the same source of revenues. So, and the trust indenture, the revenues are basically everything that the system collects, which is why you have that expansive, terminology in the bond ordinance. I hope that's helpful. I'm happy to answer more questions.
Well, my question is, the sewer assessments are being paid by the people of specific projects that the sewer authority have done. If it is revenue that's going to, well, then it can't be revenue that's going to pay down the cost of the bonds because it is already earmarked for their own particular project.
Okay, so let me try to explain. So included in the definition of revenues are basically everything that the sewer system collects. So you've got assessments, which are charges, or I don't want to confuse the terminology, but assessments, which are amounts that homeowners pay when sewer lines are laid past their homes and they can connect in. But you also have annual user fees. And so for this type of project, it's primarily supported by user fees. But the revenue fund, the enterprise fund of the city, basically is, one big fund, and all of the user fees and the assessments all get dropped into that one enterprise fund. So basically what you're saying is whatever we have in our enterprise fund can be used to pay the debt service on the bonds, because there's not separate accounts, not separate tracking, for the bond purpose, at least for the revenue bond indenture. It's just one big enterprise fund.
I understand it's one big fund. It sounds like it is simply a bank account that the board of the Warwick Sewer Authority uses to pay their debts, and they receive money from individual projects as well as user fees. So,
And it's also used for operations. It's just the one big fund where all the revenue goes in and it pays for operations of the system and debt service for the system, all out of the enterprise fund.
was there some kind of fiscal note that was drafted to figure out how this was, how much all of this work was going to cost and how it was going to be paid?
Hi,
Because I
Lynn,
think
you, Lynn
I
here?
think we were limited to 2 areas that needed the work. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I thought I heard you say was this was for the airport interceptor and for a project, maybe it was interceptor you used in the Oakland Beach area.
That is correct.
Okay. And was there a fiscal note concerning how much that was going to be?
I believe Lynn has that available. Lynn, you're on mute. There you go. Oh, still on mute.
I have
Hi.
the amortization schedule here with all the different pieces.
Okay.
I can
that's
quickly
P-
scan it and screen share it, or I can do this.
Well, that's not gonna work. Probably the
That's
screen
not really
share.
working.
Can't see that.
Would it be helpful if I did a quick scan and share it to my screen for you?
It would help me.
Okay, let me go do that real quick.
Karen, while Lynn is doing that, is there any, or what is the reason that this has been docketed as a PCO versus a PCR?
That is because the city's charter requires that when you're issuing bonds, that a bond ordinance need to be adopted. There are some situations where we have special acts passed by the General Assembly authorizing bonds for a project, and those special acts say that, you know, once the voters have approved it, then the power granted is exercised by resolution of the city council. So you occasionally do see bond resolutions when you have that kind of structure. But in this case, we're working under the charter provisions that require a bond ordinance. I would note, because I think there has been some questions in the past about the form of ordinance and why it's passed as an ordinance and whether it needs to go into the code book. And what I have said before, including to other communities that routinely pass bond ordinances, is that not every ordinance needs to go into your code. So it's entirely possible to adopt a bond ordinance that is not codified. Warwick so far in the past has determined that it wanted to put these ordinances in the code, but there's no reason why it needs to be codified. But it does need to be by an ordinance pursuant to the charter.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Qualley, do you have any other questions while we're waiting for Lynn?
No, I'm just going to comment that the first paragraph A refers to this task as being the project with a capital P, and it says as it's defined below. And I can't find that anywhere else in the document, the words "the project." So this ordinance is not very well drafted. And once the money gets transferred to the sewer authority, they can use it for anything that they want. It is not earmarked for anything in particular. So it's
earmarked for sewer system improvements. I'm sorry, I'm not in front of my computer, but there is a project definition. It's the one that's in the caption of the ordinance as well. This is what the funds can be used for. It does not specify and limit it to the airport interceptor and the Oakland Beach interceptor, but it does specify, I think in some detail, the sewer system improvements. The other thing you need to know is that these bonds have to be issued to the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, and the Infrastructure Bank gets a certificate from the Department of Environmental Management that your project is on the project priority list, and neither the Warwick Sewer Authority nor the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank is authorized to finance anything that is not on DEM's project priority list.
I understand what you're saying, and I reading the title, and I'm assuming on the third to last line, they meant to mean studies rather than SUTIDES. But all the rest of the language sounds like work that the sewer authority does on a daily basis. So there's nothing to say that this is for any particular project as defined in section A.
Councilman Corley, I'm going to interrupt, please. So Lynn has put up the bond issuance breakdown. I don't know if that addresses
So
your question of.
This is the payment schedule.
Okay.
Is that supposed to be on our screen now?
Yes, it is on our screen. It's on my
Okay.
screen anyways.
All right, wow.
I can see it just fine. Thank you.
Mhm.
I believe you, it's just not on my screen. And let me share screen. Am I supposed to look at that? No.
Yeah, I see it
Okay.
on my screen too.
All right.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, while Councilman Corley goes ahead and maybe compresses his one screen with everyone's faces on it.
Okay.
Lynn, so what you were saying basically about the pay down and what Earl was saying too about the bonds, that there's going to be no additional cost. A good analysis for the average American or average citizen would be, you buy a car after 5 years, you have a car payment, you allocate your budget, monthly budget to make towards that car payment. At the end of the 5 years, instead of just taking that money and putting it back in the general, you now can go ahead and buy maybe something else like a new fence, and then you do the monthly payment that doesn't, so you use that payment for something else instead of on that car?
Yeah, and
Okay.
actually let me share screen this other one. Right there, make it bigger, 'cause I can't even
Thank
see
you.
that. So you'll
Perfect.
see in fiscal year 22, if you compare it to 21, there's a $1.5 million drop off there. So that's where I'm saying this $445,000, rough math, we're still down 1.1.
And while Councilman Corley,
Councilman Corley, have you?
I've got the numbers in front of me now.
Okay.
so Mr. Chairman, while Councilman Corley's looking at that, if I may, Earl,
Yes.
I know that there's a lot of concerns going on. There's a lot, like especially sewers, that's been a thorn on our side. And when did you take over the sewers? You took over, has it been a year yet?
No, it hasn't. It was August of last year.
August of last year. And you basically have an entirely, pretty much a revamped department, new department.
Yes.
And also you're dealing with infrastructure laxes, like there's been no attention to the infrastructure in the previous, for at least, you know, we could safely say 20, 30 years.
That's correct. I've been
So-
here almost 23 years, and the infrastructure underground was never looked at in detail. It started to rear its ugly head when we had the first pipe collapse at Cedar Swamp, and that brought attention to it. And at that point, in reference to that sewer shed in the Oakland Beach interceptor, the former leadership team here knew about those pipes and did not address it.
Right. Thank you. And so therefore, the frustration, which I can definitely understand because I certainly had my fair share, you're coming at a lot of different things after so many years of just basically being ignored. You're attacking a lot of different fronts. You're defending a lot of different fronts, and you're attacking a lot of issues that need to be attacked. And number one priority, I would assume that your department did, was the safety and the infrastructure so that it secures before we, basically like what we were just talking about, the infrastructure of the interceptors, making sure that they don't collapse again, making sure we don't get sinkholes. So you have to worry, number one, about that, and then move forward into getting the other projects done, correct?
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Okay, so seeing that you've been on there for less than a year, you're coming into an organization, and I think all of us on the council can agree that the sewers were basically the sewer authority in the past. From what we've learned over the last couple of years, I know that I had to deal with a lot of things considering the odors at Cedar Swamp, that you're taking over a lot of things and going through a lot of steps to repair these issues for the last 20 years where it was basically ignored.
That is correct.
Okay, so this is just phase one of many phases that you're going to be repairing and that you have to address. Safety is like going to be the number one, but you're going to be addressing other issues too that other people may have.
Yes,
Okay, and this is just the first step.
correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
Yes, Councilwoman
Oh,
Travis.
All right, well, I got Earl there. So did you prioritize, Earl, when you cut on some of the issues and problems we had?
Yes,
So,
Councilwoman.
so you basically are saying that the two interceptors that we're talking about now, the airport one and the Oakland Beach one. Now, this Oakland Beach one is the one that's near Vets High School, not in Oakland Beach itself.
Correct.
This
So,
isn't near Vets that goes into Sandy Lane and all that. That's the Oakland Beach interceptor we're talking about.
yes, it is.
Right. Well, also, just a couple of weeks ago, or maybe, didn't we have a problem at the pumping station on Suburban Parkway that a pipe burst over there?
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
So
we had
that,
it shows that in different areas, we have problems throughout the city.
correct.
All right. I just wanted to make sure, I'm sure you're prioritizing and that these two are two of the main issues right now. And there's a lot of things that have to be done with the sewer department. Right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We have a 60-year-old aging infrastructure that has to be, some of it has to be rehabilitated, some of it has to be maintained. But to bring it back up to where it needs to be, we need to put in investment into that infrastructure.
Right. And these two are one of the priorities right now. And I know we talked about this. We even got a package that you put together for Tim and myself about these two interceptors.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Qualley, you have any further questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I have already covered them and the reasons, what I think might be some errors in the proposed ordinance that we have in front of us.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Karen, for weighing in on this. It has been most helpful. So this is an issue that's involving $7 million. And I know we spent a lot of time on this. There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of dialogue, a lot of questions asked. And my opinion is that's what we need to do. That's what we should be doing. This isn't a $7,000 piece of equipment we're talking about. And I appreciate the fact that everyone contributed to this discussion in one form or another.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, can I make a statement since I haven't talked at all on this?
Yes, Mr. President, and also, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I was remiss in accepting a motion on this without asking any members of the public for comment. So I'm going to need to defer to legal counsel on how to do that, because on a $7 million item, I personally want to hear from the public if they want to speak. Mr. President.
Thank you. I agree with Councilman Howe and Councilwoman Travis about the need to fix this aging infrastructure. The problem is, as I've sat here for 20 years, and I've sat through director after director, there's no fiscal accountability as to what needs to get done and how to get there. There's always it seems like there's always a fire. There's a sewer line collapse. We're not repairing the infrastructure. And I think we've heard the sewer authority come before us. And I think, I don't know if Earl's still on the line, but it was, okay, I see you there, Earl. But I think your testimony before is something like you need about $100 million or $160 million. How much do you need to get the infrastructure, not new expansion, up and running?
So, Council President, I have never publicly given a number such as that.
Okay.
The way we approach this is not to have a knee-jerk reaction and react to a crisis. Yes, but we've had pipes collapse. We've had pipes collapse because we haven't, and when I say we, the sewer authority in the past hasn't done a condition assessment to evaluate those pipes. Last October, we went out for competitive bid and we awarded a bid to National Water Main to come in and look at our interceptors from 15-inch to 48-inch in diameter and develop a condition assessment. Basically give us the video of what those pipes are from the spring line up to the crown.
So Earl, is that all the lines? So we're clear. Is that all the lines or certain interceptors?
So those about 76,000 linear feet of major interceptors. We are not even going to take into consideration all the lines in the city because after 1981, there was a transition to PVC. PVC has a useful life of 75 plus years. So we can rest assured that PVC is not going to degrade because of hydrogen sulfide. So we have a finite amount of pipes that we needed to look at that are under the old material that was put in back in the 60s and 70s, which is the concrete pipes. So we've looked at those.
So you've looked at all the concrete pipes?
Yes,
okay.
We have. And we've done a video and what we're working through that to look through that condition assessment and start identifying additional pipes and interceptors that either need to be rehabilitated or maintained and or repaired. The last thing we want to do is face another pipe collapse. Creates a huge environmental non-compliance, creates an incredible safety factor, and creates an incredible cost. So if we can go in and line a pipe, we're fixing it right the first time.
So my question to you is, and I've made this statement quite often, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up someplace else. So this assessment that you had done, I would assume it includes other interceptors, correct?
It does.
Others. And what are you looking at for a budget on those items? And when can we expect those to come before us?
So,
and how much is that going to cost? And how many linear feet need to be replaced besides these two interceptors? Because obviously, if those collapse, it affects everybody.
You're absolutely right. And those are great questions. And we're still working through reviewing those condition assessments and building and planning those projects. So we're looking at a strategic approach. You know, we have infrastructure that no one addressed and basically ignored for years because it's underground. And once it's underground, we don't have to worry about it. You know, again, being in maintenance for a very long time here and now as the interim executive director, I understand where we need to go and develop a planned approach at it. And this can be accomplished, but it takes time, it takes effort, and we have to address the critical infrastructure that we have already identified that needs to be rehabilitated.
So, you know, I'm just going to make a statement here, Mr. Bond, that I've heard a lot of sewer authority directors talk on these issues. And they come before us with whatever the issue is of the day, as we're faced with here today. And then I know that you did a study, and we have to get those numbers. But to me, and what I've seen consistently, a consistent theme throughout the sewer authority over the years is that the projects are not properly estimated. The costs are not properly estimated. There's not, maybe a 5% increase or 2 or 3% increase per year, depending on how long it's going to take, in this case, to use the $7 million to do those things. And what happens is we end up short. So in a lot of these different things, you might be talking to Councilwoman Travis or Councilman Howe 2 years from now, and for some reason the interceptor couldn't get done for whatever the reason was, because there wasn't enough money in there. And so what I get frustrated with is listening to, okay, we did a study to determine how bad these pipes are. And we've determined that we need to do this to these 2 sections. But we never look at it in its entirety. We never look at it and say, okay, we're going to go from here to here to here. That's never presented to the city council. What happens is we get somebody in your position that says, hey, I was one of the guys sounding the alarm, or I knew about it, but they didn't do anything. And then the next sewer authority director comes in, and history repeats itself. And for me, it's very, very frustrating. I commend you that we need to fix these, but I'd like a big picture as to how much we need to spend for all these cement pipes. I mean, obviously you had the study done, and I don't think it's fair to us or to the ratepayers or the taxpayers to not know what we're looking at for costs. So when Lynn Project turns around and says, oh, we can afford this, we're down $1 million, it's only going to be 400,000, to look at what else we need to do. Is there a point where you're going to come before us? Or can you give us the study to say, hey, look, my view is that these are the pipes that need to be fixed. This is my estimate of cost, and this is when I think we can get it done. Because this is an entire system. It's not just one pipe. Can you answer if you can get that information?
I'm going to try and provide an answer to you.
Okay.
So the mayor and his leadership team tasked me with that task to actually look at this infrastructure and reinvest in this infrastructure because it's concerning. Point being, we need to rehabilitate as opposed to replace. So unfortunately, you're asking, and I'm going to give you an example. You've got a pipe underground that's been there for 50 years. And I understand everybody's concern that you want a 100% concrete price on what it would cost per linear foot. Any project has known risks and unknown risks. So we can give an estimation based on opinion of probable cost on what it would cost to reline it. So just to give you a quick example, if I have it on still up, I will. Let me give you an example. So the 2011 Cedar Swamp pipe collapse, and I base this on linear footage, was $45,210 per linear foot. It's approximately 50 feet of pipe. If we had done a proper condition assessment on that pipe, the way it should have been done, you would have looked at $355 a linear foot to reline it. Okay, so if we move forward to Sandy Lane, the pipe collapse, 154 linear feet. We spent approximately $5,544 for that 154 linear feet. If we were to line it like we did the remaining section of Sandy Lane, $145 a linear foot. So I understand your concern, and I understand that you're looking for that big picture, and that's what we're working towards, is that big picture. That big picture takes time. to identify, to plan, to prioritize the future projects. Currently, we're looking at infrastructure that's 60 years old. And we have 2 pipes right now that are at a critical stage. So we need to address that. We all know that the pipes have collapsed. We need to fix that infrastructure. Okay, so we need some time to be able to evaluate, develop a plan the correct way to fix it right the first time. We got to stop being firefighters. We got to start planning and moving forward in a correct and methodical way, dealing with it. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did, and I think you're going in the right direction. It's just, it's frustrating for me because I've sat here for a long time and I've heard other directors say, yeah, that's what we're going to do, just like you did. But then at the end of the day, we don't have a plan in place, a budget in place to continue to get that done. And I expressed this opinion over the years with regard to the paving budget. You know, we would say, hey, we have $1 million in or $2 million. And the useful life expectancy of a road is, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. And to replace every road in the city, the directors would tell me take 98 years. So, you know, that's way beyond the useful life expectancy. And so I think there's a fear here of, and I'm not talking about you, Earl, I think you're attacking things. I think there's a fear here of past directors not being able to say, hey, look, this is what we need. So when the water authority comes before us, you know, they told us last fall, you know, to replace the infrastructure that they need, they probably need around 160 million. Obviously, we can't afford that, but we got to look at all of those issues across the board, because if we only look at these things in a vacuum, we don't give the full picture to the citizens about what they can expect for costs, for rate studies, which I'm sure you'll do in the future. I'm sure you're going to want to do other projects like this. So I just, you know, prior planning is the, whatever it is, the 6 Ps. And I think you're trying to do that. But we never get at the end where we're going, how much it's going to cost, and what we can expect in the future, because these are all connected. If one part drops, it has a big impact on all the others, as you just pointed out. And we had failed to do that before. I'm glad you're attacking this issue, but I still would like to see a big picture, and that's my statement, Mr. Chair.
And Council President, we're working on that. It's going to take time. I can tell you that the mayor and his leadership team is committed with the leadership team down here at the Sewer Authority to do it right and fix it right the first time. Okay, it takes time. We've got an infrastructure that is sick. It aged out for 60 years. A plan is not going to be developed in 6 months. It's frustrating. I understand, but we're moving down the right path. We're moving forward, and we need to fix the critical infrastructure that we've already identified, and then move forward to fix other critical infrastructure. We're eventually going to get over the curve and be in a positive spot. You know, the mayor is 100% committed to the infrastructure improvements here and focus on the infrastructure. He witnessed the Sandy Lane pipe collapse. He witnessed the Cedar Swamp pipe collapse. You know, but we need to move. We've recognized what's happened in the past. We should draw from lessons learned on that and move in a positive forward direction.
Thank you, Director, Council President. I'm going to defer to our council solicitor. So, Bill, I had erred in accepting a motion in a second and had not invited members of the public to comment. How do we fix that? You're muted. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, a motion for favorable action on this item was made by Councilman McAllister and seconded by Councilman Howe. It is acceptable at this time to continue the discussion amongst the council members, as well as solicit the insight of the members of the public wishing to speak prior to any vote on the matter itself.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I would ask if there are any members of the public who wish to comment or have questions on this item.
Yes, we do.
Please identify yourself for the record, please.
Roger Durand.
Okay, Mr. Durand, go ahead.
Yes, good evening. I have a couple questions with reference to, my question is basically this. Obviously, things are difficult insofar from the taxpayer, ratepayer standpoint. We can't be at City Hall because of the COVID and the like. A lot of information is being bandied about tonight. We don't see the documents ourselves. So I really think, number one, and where I'm really confused, Ed, I can't get over the point that the WSA is a separate enterprise fund. And yet we don't have the board of directors from the WSA making a presentation to the council. Can you explain to me why not?
I do not have an answer on that.
I mean, I think that's basic. And as I say, I know quite a few people who, number one, are older, do not have access to computers. You mentioned Zoom to them, and it's a foreign word. My point is, I really think when we're spending $7 million, we can hold this off till next month when hopefully we can come over to City Hall and have other people attend to make comments. So that's number one.
Mr. Durand, I'll just follow up with you. This is an ordinance, so it will require 2 passages.
Oh, I understand that. But usually, Ed, you know, in the past, we usually get one bite at the apple and we come back to City Hall. We discussed it. We opened the mic last time. We can't do it a second time. So do I have your assurances if next month we have a meeting that people can come over there and discuss this?
I don't have a problem with further discussion.
Okay. Well, thank you very much on that point. Let's move on. One of the things Mr. Boyd said was the infrastructure bank. Can he explain to me the process for getting the money from the infrastructure bank?
Mr. Bond? Or
Yeah, hello,
Karen?
yeah,
Or Karen?
I'm going to let Lynn explain that. She's the finance director.
Okay.
Lynn, if you would, please.
What part of the process do you need clarity on?
Well, Lynn, let me be honest with you. I've been active with the sewers for years. Mr. Lattisaw can tell you this. So when they were getting funding for the various sewer projects, I attended the meeting. Bill Aquino, I think his name was, Ed. You remember his name, the guy from East Greenwich?
It was Bill Esquino,
He invited us
correct.
up to he invited us up to Providence. So I went up there with about 3 other people because we've been very active with sewers, cost overruns and the like. And he explained to us back then, and this was when President Obama was in office, that money was being cut for the ecology and the like. So you just don't walk in there on the Monday and say, hey, we're here, we're Warwick, we need money, can we get it in 6 months? No. He told us it could take 2 to 3 years to get this money. So when Mr. Boyd said tonight, Mr. Bond said tonight, with reference to the infrastructure bank, that brought back memories with reference to what happened. And we just saw it applicable for the people in Governor Francis Phase 3. Just for your edification, Lynn, when they said at a council meeting about a year ago that they were only going to be able to get 20-year bonds for people in Phase 3, Governor Francis, I called up and I said, what's this all about? How come they're not going to get the 30 years bonding, which Mr. Lattisaw, that was one of the reasons he held the Sewer Review Commission, right, Ed?
That's correct.
You wanted 30-year bonding. And they said, nobody from the WSA has. You're the first person who has contacted us. I was shocked. So that's a roundabout way of saying, that's why I'm asking the process, because I've been exposed to it. I see how long it takes. So why don't you explain to me who you've spoken to at the Infrastructure Bank regarding this?
I think Earl needs to answer this one, actually. Earl,
Excuse me?
where did Earl go?
I'm here.
Director,
I'm here.
go ahead.
So the process that's in place, the first thing that has to be done is your projects have to be identified on a project priority list for DEM.
Director, we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
No,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So the first process is you have to identify the projects that you're going to need funding for and
Correct.
make sure that they're on the project priority list for DEM.
Correct.
Okay.
So what's the
So-
lead time right now?
These projects have been on the project priority list for more than 1 year.
That's what I'm saying to you. So it's not that you can pass this ordinance. The reason I'm saying to this, there seems to be a rush that we have to have this done because we might have a pipe break next week.
No,
Never
you don't,
heard this before.
excuse me, you're misunderstanding me. Because the project was identified on the project priority list does not mean it takes a year to get the financing. It has to be identified on the project priority list. That's number one.
Well,
Let me
okay.
finish, okay? Number two is, once we've identified the projects, we developed an opinion of probable cost on the project, then we get into this step here where we request a revenue bond to construct the project. Once that revenue bond authorization has been given, then what we do is we apply for the money through the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. It goes through the process, and then the bonds are sent out and awarded. So the process is not 2 to 3 years. I've been here for a while, and from what I can see, it's less than 3 to 6 months.
So then what happened with Governor Francis Phase 3? That's been on a drawing board since 2013.
Right, but we're not here to address Governor Francis
Yeah,
Phase 3. We're here to address the
Mr. Durant,
$7 million
excuse me. Director
infrastructure.
Bond, excuse me. Roger, just keep in mind, what we're here to discuss tonight is PCO 1120, which is the $7 million bond, okay?
Ed, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, but I still, and I'm not going to get back to Governor Francis Phase 3. I've made that point. But it was brought up to you by Mr. Sinapi 2013 tonight regarding some votes. So it goes to credibility with the WSA. As you know, $33 million was appropriated for new sewer construction, Bayside being the biggest. That was appropriated for $33 million. And as far as I know, between Governor Francis Phase 3 and the projected cost of Bayside is going to be $33 million. The rest of the projects can't be done. So let's go back to the $7 million we're allocating right now. It was kind of interesting. One other sidebar. In 2013, it was Councilman Solomon and Councilman Marola who made the comment that we should be addressing these issues and giving the money out piecemeal. We should not be going out and just giving the WSA 33 million unless we have a total accountability every time they call us. So are we going to have the same accountability for the $7 million?
Director Bond, do you want to answer that?
Because it was Councilman Solomon and Marola who suggested that in 2013. So I would assume if it's applicable in 2013, it should be applicable in 2020.
Okay, Mr. Duran, give the director an opportunity to answer the question.
So could you repeat your question, please?
My question was in 2013 with the 33 million for the construction projects, the new sewer constructions. Councilman Marola and Councilman Solomon were very hesitant to vote on that unless because of the past experience with the WSA and cost overruns, they wanted to have everything done piecemeal, total accountability as to what was being spent. And it's certainly applicable today because Governor Francis was over budget. And from what I read in the Beacon recently, they're suggesting 29 million for Bayside. There's your 33 million right there. And the other projects are going to have to, I don't know how you're going to get the money. So the point is this, with the $7 million that you're allocating here tonight, or hoping to get started with, what oversight is the city council going to have on that?
So this isn't putting in a new project. This is doing a repair.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that, but you just brought up another good point. And I was going to ask you next, but you just brought up the issue. When Councilman Lattisaw held the Sewer Review Commission meetings, which I attended quite a few, one of the things he wanted to incorporate in the Sewer Review Commission meetings was a repair budget for the WSA every year. I think it was going to be $750,000. Ed, was I correct on that number?
I don't remember the number.
But he was going to have a sewer, a budget, repair budget every year for the WSA. So my question is, how much is in the budget today? The repair budget that was set up vis-a-vis the sewer commission.
So the renew and replace budget has, and this is an estimate because I don't have the numbers in front of me, approximately $2.5 million.
That's in the budget right now?
Yes, sir.
So why can't we use that to do this replacement here?
Well, because first of all, the cost of the project is $7 million, not $2.5 million, so we won't pay for it. And second of all, if you take that $2.5 million and drain the bank account, we need to renew or replace something else. We have no funds for it.
No, I understand that. But if it's you weren't the one who said, but I got the impression from some of the city councilors this thing had to be approved right away. So we have $2.5 million to cover at least the immediate problem. And then with the $7 million, we can refurbish a $2.5 million or 2.4, whatever you said.
Unfortunately, that's not how the infrastructure bank works. You don't borrow a bond to replace a savings account.
Okay. Just a suggestion. Now, let me ask you this. Do you have a schedule for the repair inspections every month, every year? How does that work?
Give me some more. What are you looking for? When you say repair and inspections, help me with that.
I thought there was a schedule, again, predicated on the Sewer Review Commission, and Mr. Lattisaw, Councilman Lattisaw can certainly chime in because he chaired it. But I was under the impression it was going to be a yearly inspection process going through every year. Certain areas we're going to inspect.
So let me address that for you.
Sure, go ahead.
The Sewer Authority has a CMOM program that is designed for a 5-year repeating life cycle, where 20% of the system should be looked at and evaluated, cleaned, maintained, and that's in place.
Okay, so we are doing that. Is that how you discovered these problems?
No, these two pipes
you're talking about?
These two pipes were discovered when the road collapsed.
Okay. So my next question is, what's the total debt of the WSA now?
I'd have to get that answer for you.
Because Janine, last meeting I went with Janine Burke for Governor Francis Phase 3 2 years ago. She said it was $108 million.
Roger, again, I would just ask you to keep your comments or questions in line with the $7 million bond request that we have in front of us.
Yeah, but my question is that if we got 108 or $100 million, we're adding another $7 million to our kitty. That's a lot. That's a big expense. That's my point. You get my drift, Ed?
I hear what you said.
I mean, bottom line is we seem to be borrowing a lot of money for everything, roads, now we got sewers and everything else. When do we get to the point we got to cut it back? So that's basically my question, because I thought somebody answered the question tonight. It was $11 million for the WSA. Did I misunderstand what I heard?
$11 million for what?
When Lynn just gave an answer to somebody, $11 million on some project, I didn't know if that was a total we have outstanding, or that was regarding how much we have in repair budget. I didn't know exactly what the figure was. That's why I'm trying to find out if we paid off all the 108 million Janine Burke talked about 2 years ago.
Lynn, could you comment on that, please?
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little spacey because I'm quite tired from a very long day. What was your question?
I'm basically, Lynn, trying to find out, as I had mentioned, $11 million was bandied about on one of the questions just a little while ago.
Yeah,
and I
that's
should
how
have
much,
written it down.
that's how much we pay in debt, principal and interest annually for
Okay, so
fiscal
that's
year
not-
21.
Okay, so that's not our total debt. That's just what we pay for principal and interest. Okay.
Correct. And in fiscal
So
year 22, we will pay 1.5 million less.
Okay. But you don't know what our total debt is? WSA I'm talking about.
That would require more math than I can do in 30 seconds for you.
Okay. Maybe you can send it to Councilman Lattisaw and he can send it to me.
Of course.
All right, Ed, it's been a long night. I don't want to keep us much longer. The only thing I will close on, Mr. Howe made a comment that I thought was extremely relevant tonight when he talked about the mortgage company. And when you go into a mortgage company, at least when I sign mortgages, principal thing I was concerned about is what's my cost? How much is it going to cost me a month? How much is it going to cost me a year? How much is it total? And as I just said to you, as I prefaced my remarks tonight, I've heard a lot of figures bandied about with reference to how we're going to pay this down, how much this is going to cost. We're sharing screens, and we, the taxpayers and ratepayers, don't share those screens. So I'd like to have all those questions answered before we go forward with this project. So thanks, Ed, for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Duran. Thank you. Any other members of the public have any comments or questions? Do we have any other members of the public with comments or questions? Hearing none, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for this very active and what I consider necessary discussion. PCR 2920, resolution memorializing the General Assembly to enact legislation authorizing the City of Warwick to issue not to exceed $10 million general obligation bonds, notes, other evidence of indebtedness to finance the construction, renovation, improvement, alteration, repair, furnishing, and equipping of athletic and/or recreational fields and facilities for the city high schools, subject to approval of the state housing aid and at a reimbursement rate or state share ratios of not less than 35% at the time of issuance, and provided that the authorization shall not be reduced to the amount of certain grants received from state bond proceeds from the Rhode Island Department of Education or from Rhode Island School Building Authority. Councilman Sinapi.
At the request of the school department, we should hold this to the next meeting.
Okay, at the request of the school department, we will hold this until August 17th.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Councilman. PCR 42A-20, resolution of the General Assembly regarding reimbursement for hotel and meal tax revenue. Council President Marola.
So this is a resolution that I had sponsored with the mayor, and it's regarding the loss of the meal tax because several of our hotels were being used for COVID relief at the state level. As a result, we lost revenue from the hotel and meals tax. So we had put this resolution in to go to the General Assembly to ask for reimbursement for the revenue that we had lost. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council President. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the public? Do we have any questions from members of the public? Hearing
Mr.
none,
Chairman?
Sir.
I
I'm
apologize.
sorry,
May I be
Councilman.
asked to be added is it possible to be added as a co-sponsor?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Council President, you're the sponsor. You have no objection to that?
Certainly not. Would love to have Councilman Howe on there.
Council President, I would also request to be added as a sponsor. Anyone else wishing to be added as a sponsor?
I see
I
the
would
NILO
like to
on
be
there,
a-
so I'll jump on in.
Okay, well, it looks like it's unanimous. Add all the council members on as sponsors. And with that, I would entertain a motion. I'm sorry, any questions from, any other questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the public? Hearing none, I need a motion.
I move favorable action.
Seconded.
Motion favorable, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Thank you. PCR 4920, formerly 2020-293, janitorial and cleaning supplies. Who is going to take that? Is anyone here to take that? Need a
I see
motion to hold?
Christie. I see Christie is
Christie still here?
name's still on. Well, her
Christie?
name's-
Christie, you want to reply to that, or? Hearing none, I need a motion to hold till August 17th.
Motion to hold to August 17th.
Seconded.
We have a motion to hold till August 17th. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Sir, Bill?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
one clerical item or a couple clerical items. We were informed that we need to pull a couple items off of the consent calendar and give them PCRs. Going back to the bid package itself, the items are 2021-031A, 2021-031B, and 2021-013C.
Okay.
The reason that they need to be pulled off is for a member to recuse from the on the vote on those items, but be able to vote for the consent calendar in itself.
Repeat those again, please.
Sure, and I've consulted with the clerk, so if you'll
Item
indulge.
number and bid number. What item?
Item number on the bid package, item 12, which was bid 2020-031A, is now going to become PCR 64-20.
Okay.
And if we voted, this has received a favorable approval previously as part of the bid package itself. So if you want to just concur with that assessment and move a favorable action.
Can we just name them all and vote them on them as once?
I think we could bundle the three items. It's for the same reason and the same vote, Mr. President.
So you're removing the items. There's three items being removed, correct?
Yes.
So
three
I
related.
mean, I think that you'd have to vote on those separately if you're giving them separate PCR numbers.
Okay, fine. PCR 64-20, I need a motion.
Favorable action.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second by Councilman Howe. All in favor? Aye. Okay, ayes have it. Continue. And this is-
Item 13.
I'm sorry, Bill. This is because someone needs to abstain. Was that the answer?
Yes, upon further review, Councilman Sinapi is going to recuse on these votes before the
Go ahead.
full
Continue.
council. Item number 13, that is part of the consent calendar, which is bid number 2021-031B, is now going to be PCR 65-20.
For the same reasons.
Same
Need a
reason,
motion
same
on
vendor.
PCR 65-20.
Favorable
Motion by
action.
Councilman McAllister, seconded by Councilman Howe. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. Next.
And the final item is number 14 from the bid package, which is bid 2021-031C, has now become PCR 66-20. Same reason and same recommendation previously given.
Motion by Councilman McAllister, seconded by Councilman Howe. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, it is 10:40 and the Finance Committee is adjourned.
I call the Ordinance Committee at 10:40. First up on the Ordinance Committee is PCO 16-20, an ordinance relative to permitting and regulating charitable donation bins. This is Councilman Ricks, not drafted. What's your pleasure, Councilman?
Next available meeting in August, please.
I'll take that as a motion to hold to August 17th, I believe.
I believe so.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, who's making the motion?
That was Councilman Sinapi. I made the motion. Councilman Sinapi made the second.
Thank you.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That closes the Ordinance Committee at 10:41.
Mr. President, we have public safety next.
Ready on public safety?
You can call the meeting to
Go.
order.
Being polite. All right, public safety will convene at, what time we got? 10:42. First thing, acceptance of minutes from the committee meeting held on February 3rd.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have the claim of Mario Didino of 19 Brat Lane. The applicable one. Someone gets there first. Feel free to call out which part it's in.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do you want to just do a motion to hold all 7 unless we do a call to see if anyone's out there? Or how do you want to approach this?
We only do the call now if it's going to be opposition or if we have questions. There he is, Mario Didino. He's a few into the packet. Approval was recommended in the amount of $217.37. 3 estimates were provided. His affidavit appears to be filled out correctly. And his damage was on Commonwealth Avenue. Hit a pothole, which I'm pretty sure I've hit that pothole. So, any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the public? Any questions from members of the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion on the claim by Mario Didino?
I would move to grant approval in the amount of $207.98, that being the lowest of the three estimates or invoices.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have a claim of Tom Tynell of 4494 Post Road. It's immediately after Mr. Didino's. Hit a pothole on Diamond Hill Road, causing damage to tire. Appears to be more than sufficient estimate-wise. I see 3. I see approval of claim is recommended in the amount of $300. Affidavit appears to be filled out correctly. So do we have any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the public? Any questions from members of the public? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Move favorable action for approval in the amount of $300.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have the claim of Michael Ferreira. I believe it is the first one appearing in the binder. He's at 130 Pilgrim Parkway. He hit a sewer cap on Emmons Avenue. Approval was recommended in the amount of $520.94, which is the lowest of the 3 estimates he provided. It appears he filled out the affidavit correctly. Any questions from members of the committee?
A brief comment. I would say, looking at the department recommendation for the approval of the claim in the amount of $520.94, that it would be applicable to pay that amount as the lowest of the 3 estimates, because the statute that limits our authority to $300 on potholes is specific to potholes. That statute can be pulled up at section 24-8-35. And as this accident involved a sewer cap, that cap of $300 would not apply.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I'm going to ask that we hold on this until we can get the person in, for the simple fact, I look at the pictures, it doesn't seem that hubcap is very high. So I'm wondering if the car was modified, as in the shocks. The vehicle type certainly fits that description. They're saying it's a raised sewer. However, I'm looking at the picture and it doesn't seem to be raised too much for a car that hasn't been modified and lowered. So I'd like to give the person the opportunity to discuss that.
Sounds worth looking into. Any other comments from members of the committee? Any questions or comments from members of the council? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
My thinking is that because the department has investigated this and is to this committee acknowledging its liability, I believe that the department would have done its due diligence. I do see that the cap itself does not appear to be significantly elevated. I will certainly acknowledge my colleagues' comments on that. However, I do see, and the pictures on this are not entirely clear, but if one also looks at the surrounding pavement, it does appear that that surrounding pavement is also on a bump. So I could certainly see how that could pose an issue, in which if a vehicle is street worthy, if it's properly on the street, it could still bump, not just of the raised sewer cap itself, but also of the surrounding area being raised, how that could have affected a car's oil pan. Of course, I have not spoken with the constituent on this matter, or I would have mentioned so, but I think that the department's recommendation is sufficient for me as well as that additional evidence.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I happen to concur with Councilman Howell on this issue. I actually observed the same issue with how much that sewer cover is raised. And I did a little bit of research on the ground clearance of that particular vehicle. And interestingly enough, from the year of this vehicle to a later model, there is a difference in clearance. However, the clearance of that particular year on that model is 5.2 inches from ground clearance. So I don't see that manhole being raised 5.2 inches or depression in the road giving that type of elevation. The other thing I found interesting was I don't see a police report in here. And I'm going to assume that when a vehicle loses all its oil, as was stated in this report, that the vehicle would have to be towed. And in addition to that, I don't see evidence of 5.5 quarts of oil surrounding that sewer cover or resonating or wicking away from it. So those are my concerns with this. So I would support Councilman Howell's request on this for additional clarity and documentation.
Yeah, just a few notes. I mean, you're right as far as the tow. One or more of the estimates does reflect that the vehicle had to be towed in. And I can see in the picture, albeit it's hard to tell, evidence of some oil on the ground, but I don't disagree. I don't see 5 quarts of oil. But I mean, this is potentially easy to resolve simply with an inquiry upon the claimant, as well as a nice drive by this area. So I don't think there's any harm in holding it. The claimant doesn't indicate that it would be detrimental in any way. And we've held things for worse reasons, frankly. Although, bear in mind, Councilman Ricks's points are all perfectly valid, and I agree that the department likely did do its due diligence and everything else. But whether we like it or not, we have a similar obligation. So I think we got to at least do a brief inquiry and go from there. Councilman Corley, do you have something? Because you're unmuted.
Oh.
Got it. And Councilman Ricks, I'm sorry.
I would not object to holding this to the next meeting, but I would want to simply add that accidents do happen all the time, especially the ones that involve one car that don't involve a police report being taken. The person may have just, and I'm speculating here, person may have just called AAA.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I would not have called the police in this circumstances myself unless there was another vehicle involved. So I agree. That's a very good point. Does anyone else on the council have any questions or comments? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this? Anyone from the public wish to speak on this? Seeing none, do we have a motion to hold?
Move to hold to August 17th.
Seconded.
You to get a PCR. It's PCR 6720.
Move to hold PCR 6720 to August 17th.
Thank you.
All in
Thank
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next. Claim of Mark Huel. My apologies to Mark for likely butchering his last name. It is
Skipped one also.
2 more after. Marks of 101 Louisiana Avenue. Limb of city tree fell onto his property, causing damage to fence and shrubs. He submitted 4 estimates, although one appears to be specific to trees. And the department recommended denial of the claim as the damage occurred during a windstorm event and thus an act of God. as there was no negligence on part of the city. I'm just reading from this in all fairness. His affidavit does not appear accurate, although I would refer to the solicitor on that. He checked off the bottom box and didn't fill it out thereafter on the line. So that's a problem in and of itself.
Mr. Chairman, given the timing and the deficiency noted, perhaps it would be in order to continue the item to the next meeting in order to, clarify any deficiencies in paperwork as well as proceed with the rest of the meeting, because it does not, unless the constituent is present on the call at this time.
Seems like sound advice. Does anyone from the committee have any questions or comments?
No.
Anyone from the council have any questions or comments?
Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I deal with these type of insurance claims all the time, and I have never seen the property owner held responsible when a tree, for whatever reason, falls onto someone else's property and causes property damage to the adjoining property. That is, in my experience, always been run through the homeowner's insurance who received the damage, whether it be a crushed car, or crushed roof, or crushed house. That's what's always been my experience. So just a point of information.
Point well taken. Anyone else on the council wish to make a comment or ask a
Yes.
question? Councilman Corley.
I have a point. In his description of the incident, says in the early AM on January 12th, 2020, with close to 50-mile-per-hour windy weather conditions, caused the limb of the city tree across the street from my house to snap off and fall on my property, causing damage to my fence and 2 shrubs. So I guess that is the basis for the city's denial of the claim that it's an act of God.
Chairman, I'm going to recommend that we hold this to give the person an opportunity to come talk or to go further, but just for the motion of time, I would like to see if we could hold this.
Agreed. Anyone members of the public here wish to speak? Ideally, the claimant if possible. Otherwise, I agree we should just hold it.
We have the only 2 attendees are the 2 MIS members.
I don't think, I think they're out on this one. Okay, we're good. Anyone wish to
Thank
make
you.
a motion?
To hold?
Nope, PCR's, you gotta,
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
PCR 6820.
PCR 6820. Thank you.
Thank you. So motion made and seconded. I think you guys said aye.
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Next is a claim of Sean Lavoy, 210 Greenhouse Road. Okay. Based on what I'm seeing already, we need a motion to hold.
Move to hold to August 17th.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded.
It's PCR 6920.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Claim of Eileen Lyon, 245 Juniper Road. Three estimates submitted. Pothole damage from Service Avenue. Approval recommended by the Department for 18384. Affidavit appears correct. Any questions from members of the committee? Any questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the public? Wait a minute, there is no public. So do we have a motion?
Move favorable action for PCR 70-20 in the amount of $183.84.
Seconded. That's 70 dash. I don't think that's 70-20.
Yeah, that one's not getting separated out yet.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's it on the consent ones. We have also PCO 15-20 ordinance in regards to the installation of a no parking sign on Parkside Drive, erected 30 feet south of the intersection of Pleasant View Road. Councilman Corley, it's not drafted.
I would ask to hold that to August 18th. I thought there was a draft, but if we don't have it, it should be held.
Sponsors requested it be held. Is there a motion?
Motion to hold to the next meeting.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then PCR 57-20, resolution in regards to erecting stop signs at Winthrop Road at the intersection of Parkside Drive and Landon Road at the intersection of Parkside Drive. Councilman Corley, this is not drafted.
Same request.
Do we have a motion?
Move to hold to August 17th.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong, but that looks like it's it.
That's it.
All right, so public safety is done.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, just wanted to, for my record, PCO 1520 and PCR 5720, both are being held till August 17th, moved by Councilman Ricks and seconded by Council Howe and unanimous votes.
Sounds correct.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, so public safety is done at 11 p.m. on the dot.
Okay, I will call the Intergovernmental Committee, starting at 11:01. Let's see. All right, okay. I see.
PCR 58-20, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, that's the first one I have, 5820, which is a resolution extending a commission to review and make recommendations to Chapter 4 of the Warwick Code of Ordinances entitled Animals and Fowls. This is Councilman Ricks's.
Mr. Chairman, for correction, real quick, I'm sorry, Councilman Ricks. That's item number 2. Item number 1 is PCR 58 after we approve the minutes.
No minutes.
Okay.
If I may clarify.
I'm sorry, 58-20.
Okay, we have no minutes, so I just read 5820 was a resolution extending a commission to review and make recommendations. Chapter 4 of the ordinances entitled Animals and Fowl. And I have a question for Councilman Ricks. 5920 appears to be a similar. I don't know if they're meant, one is meant to replace the other, if they're both two standing alone. Can you advise me?
There
Mr.
was
Chairman, if I may.
error in the earlier version of the agendas. The latest agenda, which was filed on time with the Secretary of State's office, I believe that the new version was filed on Thursday or Friday. It does make clear that 58-20 is entitled, as Councilman Howe read it, a resolution extending the sunset clause of the Tax Relief Commission PCR 10519 to June 30, 2021. And on that item, I would just say that our work was delayed due to COVID-19, and I would request a favorable action to extend the sunset clause.
Okay, so Councilman Ricks, just to be clear, 5820, are you going forward on that, or are you withdrawing that?
I would request favorable action.
Okay.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The next item is PCR 59-20, a resolution.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
on PCR 5820 is correctly posted on the agenda about the Tax Release Commission. We do need to make a clerical edit to the contents of the document itself. And I believe this amendment has come from the sponsor himself. It is on page 1 of the document, lines 12 to 14, where we would delete the words review and make recommendations to Chapter 4 of the Warwick Code of Ordinances entitled Animals and Fowl, and replace it with examine possible means of tax relief for Warwick property owners through tax exemptions.
Okay, will someone propose a motion to amend?
Motion to amend?
Second. Okay, and on the motion to amend, which was just read into the record by the solicitor, what, can I have a motion to pass the amendment?
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Okay, as amended, we should revisit our vote and reconsider it, and we have a motion to pass it as amended.
Motion to pass as amended?
Second.
I would, Mr. Chairman, if you would just make sure there's no questions from the public before proceeding.
I'm sorry. Is there any questions from the public or any questions from anyone else on the city council? Hearing none, we'll go forward on the vote on the amended PCR. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The next item is PCR 59-20, a resolution extending a commission to review and make recommendations to Chapter 4 of the Warwick Code of Ordinances entitled Animals and Fowl. Councilman Ricks.
Here, we were first delayed as a commission due to our former council solicitor moving on and not completing his review and recommendations to the commission before moving on. And then again, due to COVID-19. So I would request favorable action.
Move favorable action.
Second. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. I'm sorry.
I would note that in both instances, the titles of the documents and the dates within the documents themselves do not align. So if I could ask the sponsor of both resolutions on the tax commission, Councilman Ricks, what was the intended end date, and the same question for the intended Animals and Fowl Commission, because in the titles of the documents they say one thing and they contradict with the contents of the resolution themselves. So if you could clarify that, please.
Thank you for catching that. Obviously, I wasn't drafting these documents, but I'm glad that you were on top of this. So for PCR 58-20 relating to the Tax Relief Commission, the intended date for the extension would be June 30th, 2021. And for the Chapter 4 Commission, the intended extension would be through December 31st of this year, 2020.
Okay, with that in mind, not to get in the way here, but Mr. Chairman, on the first item, we would need to make another amendment to the, or to expand the prior amendment to 5820 to change line 26 of 5820 to read June 30th, 2021, where it currently says December 31, 2020. If someone could move that amendment to match the sponsor's intent.
Move to amend.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. As amended, is there a motion for favorable action?
Move for favorable action.
Second. All in favor? Second.
Aye.
Aye. On PCR 59-20, the date should read, what was the date again?
December 31, excuse me, 5820, excuse me, June 30th, 2021.
So,
that
Mr.
is-
Chairman, the item here would need an amendment to line 30 to change June 30, 2021 to December 31, 2020 to meet the sponsor's intent.
Okay, on the amendment to December 31, 2020, do I have a motion?
Motion made.
Second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. On the amended PCR 5920, I have a motion for favorable action.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Any questions from the public?
Oh, any questions from the public? Any questions from the council? Do we have a vote on the motion for favorable action? Aye.
Did you just vote or did we make an motion?
No, we made a motion. I believe the motion passed.
Yep.
And then I was going back to a motion for favorable action for 5920.
Motion for favorable action 5920.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I don't see anything else. Is there anything else that I'm missing on intergovernmental?
That's it.
I believe that concludes committees.
Council President, if I may suggest, we push the two time-sensitive items to the top of the docket, one being the unanimous consent item and the other being the sewer bond. That way our debate this evening was not for no reason.
Yeah, I understand that. I just need to talk to the council solicitor, and people can make that motion at the appropriate time. It'll take 2 minutes here before we start.
Ed, did they put the AC on there this time? Did they put the AC on there this time for you guys? I'm assuming that's a no and that he's bitter.
We're good. No, it's good. I'm not bitter.
I'm glad to hear they put it on.
I never get bitter. I get
So
even.
are we all on? Are we all ready? Phil, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So the city council will come to order and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Here.
Mr. Corley,
Here.
Mr. Howe,
Here.
Mr. Lattiser,
Here.
Mr. McAllister,
Here.
Mr. McElroy,
Yeah.
Mr. Ricks,
Here.
Mr. Snappy,
Here.
Ms. Travis.
Here.
9 present.
Mr. Corley, if you could lead us in the national anthem. And then Phil, if you could play, the Pledge of Allegiance. And Phil, if you could play the national anthem. Councilman Corley, you have to unmute it. You have to unmute yourself. It's muted now. You have to unmute yourself. Go ahead. You can hear you now.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
Indivisible,
with
with liberty,
justice
for all.
justice for all.
Phil, if you could play the national anthem for us. Mr. Corley, if you could mute yourself. Thank you, everyone. The first item on the agenda is executive communications. There are none. General communications, I was just going to say, obviously, we're still in Zoom as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, and the public's been notified as to how to participate in the meeting by call or by Zoom. Is there any other comments from members of the council on any issues? If not, under general communications, we'll go to acceptance of minutes from council meeting held. There is none. And then we'll go to the public comment after the general communications and prior to the consent calendar at each city council public meeting. There shall be a 15-minute period during which citizens may comment about Warwick City government and issues subject to the following stipulations. The total time period for public comment is 15 minutes. Comments need to be brief in order to allow as many members of the public to participate as possible. The topics of comment shall be issues directly affecting city government. City council members will not respond to questions during the public comment period. The public comment session will terminate at the expiration of 15 minutes. And waiver of this provision requires unanimous consent. Phil, are there any members of the public that wish to speak?
There are not at this time.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is announcement of appointments. There are none. Appointments requiring confirmation. There are none. Consent calendar. PCR 5420, resolution relative to bids, committee report. Councilman Lattiser.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Lattiser.
Committee recommends favorable action on PCR 5420.
It's a second.
Second.
Councilman Howe, Councilman McAllister. Go ahead, Councilman Lattiser.
Number one, 2017-061, State of Rhode Island General Office Supplies, favorable action. 2019-052, Rescue Service Billing Administration, favorable action. 2020-053A, Security System Monitoring, favorable action. 2020-053B, Security System Monitoring, favorable action. 2020-053C, Security Monitoring, favorable action. 2020-053, Security System Monitoring, favorable action. 2020-053E, Security System Monitoring, favorable action. 2021-037, Medical Supplies and Equipment, favorable action. 2020-284, Purchase Police Vehicle Interceptor Vehicles, favorable action. 2020-310, Pavement Management System, favorable action. 2021-030 has become PCR 6120. 2021-031, Pest Control has become PCR 6420. 2021-031 B has become PCR 6520. 2021-031C, Pest Control has become PCR 6620. 2021-032, Rebuilding or Rebuilt Exchange Transmissions has become, it's favorable action. 2021-043, Structural Firefighting Boots, favorable action. 2021-044, Firefighter Occupational Medical Evaluations is favorable action. Excuse, somebody has an open mic.
That would be me. I apologize.
Excellent, thank you. 2021-044, Firefighter Occupational Medical Exams, favorable action. 2021-050, become PCR 6220. 2021-052, Automotive Wet Batteries, favorable action. 2021-055, Professional Printing and Mailing, favorable action. 2021-083, Rhode Island Crack Sealing, favorable action. 2020-213D, Original Equipment Manufacturers, favorable action. 2021-084, Police Undercover, favorable action. 2021-086, Precast Items for Manhole Catch Basins, favorable action. That completes it. You're muted, Mr. President.
Any questions from council members? I know we had a long finance committee meeting. If not,
Just like to reiterate on my request to skip to the sewer bond and then the unanimous consent immediately after this item.
okay. So the other unanimous consent item, there are two of them. It's committee report finance PCR 5520, resolution relative to abatements, committee report finance.
Committee recommended favorable action with a PCR assignment.
Okay, and if you could move that, Councilman.
PCR 5520, committee recommended favorable action.
Seconded by Councilman McAllister. Councilman Howe. Go ahead, Councilman.
A committee recommended favorable action on the abatements after significant discussion and detailed explanation on those abatements by the director.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council members? I know we discussed this in the finance committee meeting at great length. If not, there's one other item on the consent calendar, and that's PCR 5620, resolution relative to claims, committee report, public safety.
Committee recommends favorable action.
For action, Councilman Sinapi.
Committee recommends favorable action, although we're pulling 3 to make into PCRs,
Second.
I should say.
I have a second. Councilman Howe seconds. Go ahead, Councilman.
You want the ones we're pulling first or no?
You can go in order if you want.
All right. Committee recommends favorable action on claim of Mario Didino for the amount of $207.98. Committee recommends favorable action in the amount of $300 for Mr. Tom Tynell. Committee is making Mr. Ferrera's claim into 67-20 PCR. Committee is making Mr. Hoole's claim into PCR 68-20. Committee is making Mr. Lavoie's claim into PCR 69-20. Committee recommends favorable action for Eileen Lyon in the amount of $183.84. That should be it.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on public safety docket and recommendations? I know there's quite a few on there earlier. I mean, discussion on it earlier. If not, the consent calendar has been moved and seconded. And the clerk will call the roll. A yes is to approve the consent calendar.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Snappy,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
9 yes.
The consent calendar stands approved. I also know that there were items that were removed, but in the interest of time, Councilman Sinapi, you wanted to move one item?
Yes.
Without objection, what item would you like to move to the front?
PCO-11-20, the sewer ordinance.
Is there any objection to Councilman Sinapi moving that to the? If not, we'll go to the committee report for finance on PCO 11-20. Do we have to do a voice vote on that to move it? Well, all those in favor of moving PCO 11-20 to the front of the calendar signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. So PCO 11-20 is now on the agenda, and committee report finance.
Committee recommends favorable action on PCO 11-20.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Seconded by Councilwoman Travis, Councilman McAllister. Any discussion that we did not have in committee, knowing that this is going to take two passages? If not, a yes is to approve for first passage, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
No.
Mr. Corley,
No.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Snappy,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no.
The PCO 11-20 stands past first passage. Okay, I believe we're on the, we have different numbers here. Council Solicitor, bid number 2021-0030, is that what we're on? Which is now PCR 6120?
Yes.
Okay. What's that? Councilman Sinapi, did you have another request for to move an item up to the front of the calendar?
Yes, PCO, where is it? I should say PCR 60-20, resolution in regards to stop signs.
Okay. Is there any objection to that? Okay, all those in favor of moving PCR 60-20 to the front of the calendar signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, guys have it. We're now on PCR 60-20, a resolution in regards to erecting 2 stop signs westbound at the intersection of Plantation Street and Vancouver Avenue, and eastbound at the intersection of Northbridge Ave and Vancouver Ave. Committee report, actually that's under unanimous consent, isn't it? There was no objection to the unanimous consent, and there's no committee report on that. So Councilman Sinapi, do you want to move that favorable action?
Favorable action.
Is it seconded by Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Ricks, Councilman McAllister, Councilman Howe. Any discussion, Councilman Sinapi?
Just to point out, this is supported by a traffic study and based on constituent concerns as well. It's basically one giant intersection spread out, so it's dangerous. Hence why I wanted to make sure it gets done as soon as possible.
Okay, is there any discussion on this? If not, a yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Oh, there was no questions? What's that? Yeah. Any questions from the public? I'm sorry, I didn't see anybody from the public on, so I didn't ask. So we have on the Zoom here, we can tell who's on and who isn't. But I don't see any members of the public. Is that correct, Phil?
That is correct.
Okay. So with that said, and there's no questions from the public, a yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy. Mr. McElroy? Can't hear him. Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes.
PCR 6020 stands passed. I believe we are now at the 11:30 hour. And at this point in time, is it Rule 7?
It is Rule 21A. No new resolutions or ordinance will be introduced for discussion after 11:30. Pursuant to subsection D, waiver of that rule requires unanimous consent.
Is there anybody objecting to going beyond 11:30?
No objection.
No objection.
Okay, so we'll continue. Requires unanimous consent, correct? Okay, all those
Correct.
in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Past 11:30. We'll go back to the items that were removed from the consent calendar. Bid number 2021-030, now PCR 6120. Committee report, finance.
Committee recommended favorable action with an amendment.
For action, Councilman Lattiser.
At the request of the sponsor, we approved favorable action on PCR 6120 with the amount reduced to $9,901,302.
So first, you're moving it, favorable action, that's seconded by Councilman Howe, Councilman McAllister, and you're moving an amendment. The amendment is $9,901,302. Is that your
Correct.
amendment, Councilman?
That is correct.
Is that seconded by Councilman Howe and Councilman McAllister? Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? This is regarding paving, and it was reduced from 10 million to 901,302. That's the amendment. We discussed this in committee. If there's no further discussion on the council floor, the clerk will call the roll, and a yes is to approve the amendment.
Mr. Marola?
Yes.
Mr. Corley?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Councilman McElroy, you got to move closer to your speaker because we can't hear you.
Can't hear him.
Mr. McElroy? Mr. McElroy? Mr. McElroy? I'm not too sure how to record that vote.
I can't hear him, Mr. President.
It doesn't look like he's responding.
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Okay, great. Okay, you can hear you now.
Thank you.
You just got to move closer to the speaker. We couldn't hear you. Thank you.
Mr. Ricks?
Yelling, yes, yes.
But you're frozen out. There you are. You were frozen.
There you are.
Mr. Sinapi?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes. Yes.
9 yes to amend.
Not distributor. Okay, so the PCR 61.
Mr. President, Councilman McElroy's screen is still frozen.
Oh, you might want to mute him.
Can you assess on that? Can you assist in that, Phil?
I was on top of it.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
so Phil hopefully corrects that Zoom issue there because the screen is freezing. Why don't we have Councilman Lattisaw move it as amended?
Move PCR 63, I'm sorry, move
6120.
PCR 6120 as amended.
Seconded by Councilman Howe, Councilman McAllister. Any further discussion? If not, a yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
9 yes to amend.
PCR,
As amended.
PCR 6120 as amended stands passed. We'll go on to bid number 2021-050, now PCR 6220, committee report, finance. Let's hold till August 17th.
Hold till August 17th.
Held till August 17th. Next item on the abatement is abatement number 10732, now PCR 6320, committee report, finance.
Favorable action, I'm sorry, that was, yes, it's recommended favorable action.
Okay, for action, Councilman Lattisaw.
Recommend favorable action on PCR 63-20.
Councilman Lattisaw moves favorable action, seconded by Councilman Howe, Councilman McAllister. Any discussion that we didn't have in committee? Councilman Sinapi, I believe you're recusing yourself on this vote?
That sounds accurate, though I defer to the solicitor.
Okay. All right, so a yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll, and someone has their mic on. We're getting, if you could shut off your mic until you vote, that'd be helpful because we're getting a echo in the chamber. So a yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Abstain.
and Ms. Travis.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstention.
So PCR 6320 stands passed. Next item on the agenda is bid number 2021-031A, now PCR 6420, committee report, finance.
Committee recommends favorable action on PCR 64-20.
For action, Councilman Lattisaw.
Favorable action on PCR 64-20. We have 1 abstention.
Seconded by Councilman Howe, Councilman McAllister. Any further discussion on this item that we didn't have in the finance committee? If not, a yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
Yes.
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Just to verify, is this an abstain from me again, I assume? Yeah, it is. Abstain
Yes.
then.
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstention.
PCR 6520 stands passed. Next item on the agenda is bid number 2021-031C, now PCR 6620, committee report, finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Lattisaw.
Committee recommends favorable action on PCR 66-20 with 1 abstention.
Seconded by Councilman Howe and Councilman McAllister. Any further discussion on
Mr. President.
Yes.
Mr. President, the last vote was on 6420 that was passed, so we would be on
66.
65.
We would be on 65 this time.
Thank you.
So
So just so we're clear, we've moved and seconded PCR 6520 in case I misspoke. Thank you. Is there any questions on PCR 6520? And obviously I don't see any members of the public still on here.
This is
Is
the
that
other
correct?
Griggs and Browns one, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it, Phil, still no members of the public, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, so we're on PCR 6520. There's no questions from council members. A yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
yes,
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
I abstain. Oh, caught myself.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstention.
PCR 6520 stands passed. Next item on the agenda is bid number 2021-031C, now PCR 6620. Committee report, finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Lattiser.
Committee recommends favorable action on PCR 66-20 with 1 abstention.
Seconded by Councilman McAllister, Councilman Howe. Is there any discussion on this we haven't had in committee? If not, a yes is to approve PCR 6620. And the clerk
Is this
will call
the
the roll.
abatement,
Yes.
or is this a different? All right, thank
You're recusing yourself, yes. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
yes,
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
you. Abstain.
Ms. Travis.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstention.
66, PCR 6620 stands passed. Next item on the agenda are claims. There's a few of them. The first one is Michael Ferreira. It's PCR 6720. I believe public properties held that, not public properties, public safety held that till August 17th. Is that correct, Mr. Snappy?
That sounds accurate, but I defer to the solicitor. He's
Okay.
shaking his head yes, so.
All right, that's hold till August 17th. Next one is the claim of Mark Poole, PCR 6820. I believe that is also hold till August 17th. Is that
Yes.
correct? That's correct. Held till August 17th. Next item on the agenda is the claim of Sean Lanoy, PCR 6920. I believe that's also hold till August 17th, Councilman
Yes.
Sinapi? Yes, held till August 17th. We will move on to number 2 on the docket. That's Finance, PCR 2920, resolution memorializing the General Assembly to enact legislation authorizing the city of Warwick to issue not to exceed $10 million general obligation bonds, notes, and other evidence of indebtedness to finance the construction, renovation, improvement, alteration, repair, furnishing, and equipping of athletic and/or recreational fields and facilities for the city's high school, subject to approval of state housing aid at a reimbursement rate or state share ratios of not less than 35% at the time of the issuance, and provided that the authorization shall be reduced by the amount of certain grants received from state bond proceeds from the Rhode Island Department of Education or from the Rhode Island School Building Authority. Committee report, finance.
At the request of the sponsor, hold till August 17th.
Held till August 17th. Let's see, Mr. Sinapi, we're going to put in an ordinance so we can limit the amount of a title to a resolution. We're next on PCR 42A20, a resolution to the General Assembly in regards to reimbursement for hotel and meal tax revenue. Committee report, finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Lattiser, if you could move it for me.
Committee recommends favorable action on PCR 42A-20.
Seconded by Councilman, or the entire council, I believe, co-sponsored that. So seconded by the entire council, if the clerk could note that everybody co-sponsored that. Is there any further discussion that we didn't have in committee? Any council members? I don't believe there's still any members of the public. So the clerk will call the roll. A yes is to approve on PCR 42A-20.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
yes,
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes,
9 yes.
PCR 42A-20 stands passed. Next item on the agenda is PCR 4920, now 2020-293, janitorial and cleaning supplies, committee report finance. I believe that's hold till August 17th. Is that correct?
Hold till August 17th.
Held till August 17th. Next item on the agenda is PCO 1520, an ordinance in regards to the installation of a no parking sign on Parkside Drive, erected 30 feet south of the intersection of Pleasant View Road. It's not drafted. Committee report, public safety. I believe that's hold till August 17th, Councilman Snappy.
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
that's held till August 17th. Next item on the agenda is PCO 1620, an ordinance relative to permitting and regulating charitable donation bins. That's not drafted. Committee report ordinance. I believe that's hold till August 17th. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Hold till August 17th. Next item on the agenda is PCR 5720, a resolution in regards to erecting stop signs at Winthrop Road at the intersection of Parkside Drive and Landon Road at the intersection of Parkside. That's committee report, public safety. That's not drafted. I believe, Councilman Sinapi, that's hold till August 17th. Is that right?
Sounds accurate.
Yes.
That's held till August 17th. Next item on the agenda is PCR 5820, a resolution extending the sunset clause of the Tax Relief Commission, PCR 105-19 to June 30th, 2020. I believe that's with an amendment. Committee report, intergovernmental. Is that favorable with an amendment? Councilman
Yes.
Corley? Yes, favorable with amendment. For action, Councilman Ricks. If you want to move it.
Move favorable action.
Seconded by Councilman Howe, Councilman McAllister, Councilman Corley. Councilman Ricks, did you have an amendment? I think you was
Move the amendment.
Okay, and that's lines 12 through 14, the date, the title anyway, and the date on line 26 to
Correct.
be June 30th, June 30th, 2021. Councilman Ricks moves that as the amendment. Do I have a second? Councilman Howe, Councilman McAllister. Any discussion on the amendment? If not, a yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll on the amendment.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
yes,
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes,
9 yes to amend.
The amendment stands passed. Councilman, if you could move it as amended.
Move as amended favorable action.
Councilman Ricks moves as amended, seconded by Councilman McAllister, Councilman Howe. Any discussion on PCR 5820 as amended? I also see there's no members of the public still. Is that correct, Phil? Okay, so a yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola,
Yes.
Mr. Corley,
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser,
Yes.
Mr. McAllister,
Yes.
Mr. McElroy,
yes,
Mr. Ricks,
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi,
Yes.
Ms. Travis.
yes,
9 yes.
PCR 5820 stands passed as amended. Last item on the agenda is PCR 5920, a resolution extending the sunset clause of the Chapter 4 Animals and Fowls Commission, which was PCR 3619 to December 31, 2020. That's with an amendment. And I ask for a committee report from Intergovernmental, Councilman Corley. Is that favorable with an amendment? You're on mute, Councilman Corley. Councilman Corley, you're on mute.
Favorable action with the amendment.
For action, Councilman Ricks.
Move the amendment to correct the date to December 31st, 2020.
Okay, we're gonna move it first, and then you can move the amendment. So seconded by Councilman McAllister and Councilman Howe. Is there any, okay, go ahead, Councilman Ricks, if you can move the amendment. I think you said amend line 30 to read December 31st, 2020, correct?
Correct.
Right, that's the amendment, seconded by Councilman McAllister, Councilman Howe, Councilman Qualley. Any discussion on the amendment? If not, that's the amendment to PCR 5920. Yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola?
Yes.
Mr. Qualley?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes to amend.
The amendment stands approved. If you could move it as amended, Councilman.
Move as amended for passage.
Seconded by Councilman McAllister, Councilman Howe, Councilman Qualley. Any discussion on PCR 5920 as amended? I don't see any members of the public. A yes is to approve, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Marola?
Yes.
Mr. Qualley?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes.
PCR 5920 stands passed as amended. We already did PCR 6020 for unanimous consent. Are there any items for unanimous consent from Ward 1?
No.
Ward 2?
Pass.
Ward 3?
Pass.
Ward 4?
Pass.
Ward 5?
Pass.
Ward 6?
Pass.
Ward 7?
Pass.
Ward 8? Councilman Sinapi, no? Okay. Councilwoman Travis.
If there be no further businesses, this honorable body, I move to a docket session.
Councilwoman Travis moves to the docket session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seconding, yep, okay, so move to the docket session. Ward 1, anything to docket?
Pass.
Ward 2?
Pass.
Ward 3?
One item, Mr. President, an ordinance in regards to local vendor procurement.
We'll go into ordinance, local vendor procurement. All right, we'll go into finance on that. Anything else, Councilman Howe?
All set, Mr. President. Thank you.
Ward 4?
Pass.
Ward 5? Ward 6?
Pass.
Ward 7?
Pass.
Ward 8?
Item.
You have anything?
Yeah, one.
One, okay, with that?
Pulling up the name. Resolution in regards to the opposition to the Rhode Island General Assembly Bills S2547 H-7900 and act relating to aeronautics, airports, and landing fields - airport zoning.
Intergovernmental. Have a good evening, and the council stands adjourned.